and no water, no, of course, no plumbing, so we used the church outhouse.
Yes, that was the least fun part of the whole thing.
It was.
We had one room and a pad.
Yeah, that's right.
For our house.
Yeah. And we didn't have windows, there were shutters there, and then after several months, we were able to go to Guatemala City and buy little panes of glass and put them in the shutter
Yeah.
to get a little light. It was almost totally dark inside.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Except for the light that came through the shingles
Yeah,
and the ceiling.
Yeah, and the Chuk people most of them had never seen glass windows, so they loved looking in at us all the time. We didn't have any curtains, and that was fun. We had a kerosene cook stove, a little three burner.
No refrigerator.
No, but it worked okay.
Yeah, it did.
We
We could even set Jello at night when it cooled down.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know what was wonderful for me is that God gave us complete happiness and joy and contentment there.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any problem living in that situation, even with Galen and Joy.
There were so many believers there at the time, and they did everything that they could to help us. They brought us food lots of times. And
Yes. Lots of tortillas and...
oh yeah, we had more tortillas than we could eat.
That's right. Boy. I think for me the toughest thing during that time was the road trying to get to Guatemala City. That was really hard.
And it went up so high, and I wasn't used to that high altitude. It was, what was it, 11,500?
About that, yeah, I think it was.
That we went up to, and I always got this horrible headache.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So it was
Every
one
time.
lane dirt road for the first 60 miles.
Yeah.
I think the most difficult thing that happened there was when you got hepatitis.
Oh yeah, fun.
We'd just been there 6 months, just getting settled in. It was the rainy season. And you were so sick for 6 weeks we couldn't even get you out of the village. You weren't even able to travel.
Mm-mm.
Remember what Helen did?
Yeah, Helen Ekstrom, our dear, wonderful dear friends that lived, I don't know how many, what was it, 12 hours walk?
12 or 14.
Over steep, steep mountain roads.
Yeah.
Walked over to our place just to bring us a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
And to help out a little bit.
Yes, talk about friendship.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think we have any friends in the States that would walk that far to bring us a loaf of bread.
How many people
and help us.
would walk 24 hours over steep hills? It was really special.
Yeah.
How did you communicate with them? How did you let them know she was
You know, I was wondering about
Telegram.
that. Probably telegram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That would be the only way we could have it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But getting you out then, finally after 6 weeks, that was really difficult. We had a 70-year-old man who was dying of tuberculosis. We were taking him to the hospital. We had a 12-year-old little Kashin. He was our language helper. And I think 14-year-old, I forget her name, a girl to help you.
Was it Katal or Matal?
Something
Can't
like
remember.
that,
Yeah.
So we started out, and the road, there wasn't really a road at that time. It was a horse trail, a mule trail.
Oh yeah.
We had a Jeep. We started out, and after 7 hours of hard work, we'd only gone about 7 or 8 miles.
At one point, we slid down this muddy mountain hill sideways in our Jeep.
We did. We thought it was going to turn over.
Yeah.
And then we're going up this steep, solid rock, and the Jeep just wouldn't go. It was absolutely stuck, and it slid back into the side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And we were there a couple hours, and we couldn't move an inch.
You worked and worked and worked to get us out.
Right. And then this 12-year-old boy, a new believer, I'll never forget, he said, "Don't Kenneth, do you think we could ask God to help us?" And I thought, oh no, why didn't I think of that? I'm a missionary.
Yeah.
And we prayed, all of us prayed together. They were all believers. And within 10 minutes, we were on our way. And God showed us how to get out of that.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And it took 12 hours to get to Huehuetenango, the first town. We stayed overnight there. That was 60 miles in 12 hours.
There was a mission school there.
Yeah,
Where our kids
went later.
went later on
Yeah.
after they were older.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then the next day, it was, I don't know, 6 or 8 hours to Guatemala City.
Yeah.
And you recovered slowly. It was a long, hard trial. But, you know, God was
Mhm.
faithful.
Yeah.
It was
That-
tough.
It was.
I think you got down to about 98 pounds. You couldn't
I
eat
was-
anything.
I was skin and bones.
Remember what Galen did when you were so sick one day?
Oh, I'll never forget that. She came in with one of her Tinker toys, and she says, "Mommy, I can make you well." She says, "I'll give you a shot."
Yeah.
And she stuck that Tinker toy up to my arm.
Yeah. That was really
Yeah.
special. She must
Yeah.
have been about 2.5, I suppose, years old at that
Yeah, I
time.
bet you don't remember that.
No.
Mhm.
So we, after about a year there learning the language, I started doing a little bit of translation work. And I still remember sitting out of the little table and little wooden chairs out in front of our house and working on some beginning translation. And then after 2 years there, we were able to get our own home built. It was really nice compared to what we had. You remember how it was?
We put in a cement tile floor,
Uh-huh.
and it had adobe walls and a tin roof.
Yeah. It
That
was-
when it rained at night, it was noisy.
And it was 20 feet wide and 40 feet long. That was
Mhm.
really big. And we actually had our own bathroom, which
Yes.
was wonderful. By that time, we were able to get a plastic pipe and run it from the town fountain all the way down to our house.
Had
An
a
indoor
real
plumbing.
flush toilet.
Yeah, that was really neat.
Mhm.
Remember that old man that came walking in one day? He had walked about 12 hours over the trail, an old Chook guy. He walked in, he looked around the house with wonder. He just,
Yeah.
look, you remember what he said?
This must be what heaven's gonna be like.
That's right. He actually said,
Never seen a house like that.
no, none of them had. For us, it was so humble, but to them, it
Yeah.
was really amazing.
Mhm.
And we published the first scripture after a couple of years. We did Gospel of Mark, and we got that printed. And then we did a bunch of primers to teach people to read, and we got started right away in that.
We taught one-on-one.
Yes,
At first, we taught some readers how to teach reading, and then they, in turn, went out and taught others,
that's right.
and finally started classes.
But they did it all. We only taught a very
Yeah.
few. I don't think there was anybody there that could read or write when we first went,
Mm-mm.
that we knew. So we taught them how to read and write, just a few, like you said, and they took it from there.
Yeah.
And I read years later that was the most literate language group in Guatemala,
Yeah.
and that was all just God working through these
Well, and
few
the main
people.
reason that they wanted to be able to read the scriptures when they were translated.
That's right. Yeah, they
Yeah.
really did.
Yeah.
And the church, when we went there were believers, about 700 or so, and had a good little church right there in town. And
Mhm.
we used to go to that. Remember, the men would sit on one side and the women on the
Mhm.
other.
They all had their typical Chew clothes on,
Yes.
and the women, most of them were barefooted.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they had shoes, they would put them on just before they came into town,
Uh-huh.
and
They'd fix their hair and
mhm,
put their shoes on after
Yeah.
walking hours over the road barefoot,
mhm.
over the trails. And we had an Indian pastor there, and he did pretty good. He was from a different group,
Mhm.
different language group, but he did well. I remember the first day when we asked, well, what time is church? And they said 1 o'clock. We went up there at 1, there wasn't a soul in the church. And we thought, what's going on? Are they not having church? We found out what they really mean is when there's enough people in there, they'll start.
Yeah.
And so they're all in the market and doing their shopping, and when they get done, they come over,
Mhm.
and when it's about full, they start the church. So
Yeah.
we learned a lot about time.
The
There.
babies are in there. The
Yes.
mothers are, many of them are nursing their babies to keep them quiet, and
Yeah. And they had a 5-day calendar, so they had church every 5 days. They still used the Mayan calendar, so they had a market day and church, and that was really, really special. Well, we're back, and I decided to read a letter that I wrote in September 1965 to people that were our partners. Just a little bit of it. What a typical day was like. It was a market day, so everybody was in from the villages, and we just kept a record of that day. At 8 o'clock, the fellow that helps me with our translation came. We started translating in chapter 21 of Matthew. And at 10 o'clock, the first visitor started coming. And so that was the end of our translating for the day. First visitor was an unbeliever who wanted a tooth pulled. And so I worked on that. And every unbeliever that came, we tried to, in our, as well as we could in the language, share something about the Lord to them, so that they knew who we were and who the Lord was. And while the Novocaine was taking effect, a woman came and wanted to have her chicken inoculated. We actually treated chickens there too. And before the tooth came out, another woman came and wanted her baby to have vaccinations.
a DPT shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, and smallpox. And so, and you used to give most of those, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like it, but I did.
No.
I didn't know that.
And there are other things. Martin, one of the helpers in the translation, sells books that we were selling, books that we translated, and he came back and said he had sold 89 that month, which was a lot for down there, and wanted more. And people came to buy postage stamps. One came to buy our medicine for arthritis, others for worm medicine, which was a bestseller.
Yes.
And by lunch, 26 people had come to visit. Then during lunch, 9 more came. So it wasn't much, we didn't get much of a lunch on market days.
No.
And all of them were unbelievers. It was really a neat opportunity to minister to the people who didn't know the Lord then.
Yeah.
And they wanted vaccinations, treatment for baby with whooping cough, DPT shots. And then we went to church, and I played my little accordion. I was the church folk organist. I didn't know how to play it very well, but that was better than anything else. And
They didn't know the difference.
no. And after church, quite a few people came to buy scripture portions that we had translated and primers to learn how to read. I remember one woman received a tapeworm treatment, and last week we had treated a 4-year-old girl for tapeworm, and she produced an 8-foot tapeworm. Now, is that gross or not? And by the end of the day, 67 people had come with needs, and the Lord enabled us to minister to them.
That's right.
Yeah, that was a wonderful time. Well,
What was the date on that letter?
September 1965. Yeah. So, yeah, and so I remember the market. Remember going to the market every 5 days?
Oh, yes.
Oh, remember that time when we went up there, and like every 3 months they would slaughter a steer or beef, and then they'd hang the whole thing up in the market, in this little market. Remember what Joy said when she saw that?
Oh, I can't remember the exact words,
She
but she said,
the
What did
horse
she
is
say?
all broke.
yeah.
She was about 2,
Yeah.
and then she looked at it for a while, and she said, "It don't hurt." No, we'll never forget her looking.
It don't hurt.
Yeah. Another time we'll never forget was when we tried to go visit the, well, we actually did visit the Ekstroms. And we could see their house from our house, but it was a 14-hour trip over very steep hills to get there.
Steep, rugged mountain
Oh, very
trails.
steep. And the first day we walked about 7 hours, I guess it was, and we stayed in a little village called Shomko down at the end, very bottom of this canyon. Hardly ever got the sun. We stayed there overnight. We had our sleeping bags, and we slept in this little village that most of the people had never seen us before. They all had to come in and feel our sleeping bag, and we slept on the floor.
Yeah.
In the floor where?
It was in the little church there. They had a little church. There were believers there.
Yes.
And then we took, it was really about 5 hours straight up to get to their place.
Oh, it was.
It was really, really rugged.
We were young men.
Yeah, we could do it.
It didn't seem to be a problem, and
No.
when it got too steep, we just got on horses' backs,
Yeah.
which was a little bit scary at the time.
Yeah, going up was okay. Going down we didn't. But
Yeah.
How
And-
did Joy and I travel?
Joy and Galen were with us, and they were both on men's backs.
Yeah.
And so they took these 14 hours on men's backs, and I don't think we ever heard a cry or a whimper.
They were good.
Yeah.
Joy slept most of the time.
Yeah. And then I remember we got up the next morning to go, well, the morning we left there was completely encased in fog and drizzle.
Yeah.
You remember what I asked one of the chief guys who were with us, I said, do you think it's like this in San Sebastian? And you remember what he said?
And he says, "Ooh, the whole world's like this."
Yeah, he did. That was really funny.
But that was their view of the world. That's all they knew of the world.
Yes. Then the trip home was memorable because we had to go back, and one day we went a different way. It drizzled and rained and mud for 14 hours, and we had about a half hour to go. It was pitch dark. Galen and Joy were on the backs, and we were on horses going through this mud and wet rocks. And the guy that was carrying Joy fell backwards right on Joy.
Yeah.
And she screamed. It hurt her so bad.
Yeah, but she didn't have any bad
No.
injuries. It was probably more of a scare.
Yeah. And that wasn't the end then, because remember you got off the horse to help her. Remember what happened when you got back on the horse?
I think the saddle came off, and
you fell right.
and I fell on my back, if I remember right.
And you were a few months pregnant. I want to go back and talk a little more about the house that we had there that we built. That, it was, I remember Dave Ekstrom and we got the parts and we put together an electric generator plant, a light plant, diesel. Boy, that was so nice. We had just little lights in our house. It wasn't very powerful. And we were able to get our own washing machine up there, a big old Ringer
That was
washing
wonderful.
machine. And let's see, but we mentioned the water, but that was a challenge too, because when it rained real hard, the spring would get muddy and our water would just be absolutely filled with mud.
It would be just like mud coming out almost out of the pipes.
And even in the best of times, we had to filter it and then boil it. Or boil it and filter it, whichever.
Always we did that.
Yeah. To tell one more thing about the water system. One day we turned the water faucet on and nothing happened. It just, there was not a drop come out, and we didn't know what to do. So I started taking apart the pipe.
You can't just call a plumber there.
Hardly. And I started and taking apart the pipe just little by little. Then I got to one junction and got it apart, and I found half of a frog stuck in there. And I hate to think about whatever happened to the other half. But we didn't get sick.